on behalf of the Executives Club, we'd like to welcome you to Data to Dollars. This event is going to be brought to you by our business technology and our financial services forums. And we'd like to thank our partners at Accenture, CDW, NTT Data, and Sidley for bringing this programming to the Executives Club. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to kick off and hand things over to one of our Business Technology Forum co-chairs, Mark Lafferty, for some welcome remarks.
Thank you, Megan. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual forum event, Data to Dollars. I'm Mark Lafferty, Director of Federal Sales at CDW and co-chair of the Executives Club Business Technology Forum. I'm excited to welcome you for a discussion on best practices for data utilization and lessons learned around monetization and security. This event is brought to you by the Business Technology Forum, which I lead with Bob Kress from Accenture, and the Financial Services Forum, led by Chris Porter from NTT Data and Andrew Rosier from Sidley Austin. We have been looking forward to exploring this topic for quite some time and had the opportunity to collaborate on this one together, as there's been a lot of interest and enthusiasm from the members of both of our forums. We thank all of the engaged club members who provided input and supported this event. Before we get started, I'm going to remind you of a few interactive Zoom features that you can use to join our conversation. So we encourage you to use the chat feature throughout this discussion to share thoughts with your fellow participants. We'll have time for audience questions at the end of our meeting. Use the Q&A box if you would like to ask one of the panelists a question. Thanks to all of you for tuning in this morning. We are in for a fantastic session with our expert panelists. I'm going to turn things over to my co-chair, Bob Kress, to introduce our speakers.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the event. As Mark said, we're happy to partner with the finance group to bring this event to you. Hopefully, you'll all find it interesting and take something away from it. I'm Bob Kress. I'm a managing director at Accenture Security and co-chair of the Business Technology Forum at the Executives Club, along with Mark. Very excited for today's discussion and to provide the introductions for our esteemed panelists. First up, we have Dan Tanasia, who's the CEO and founder of Bev Analytics, a digital survey platform that converts smartphone pictures to actionable data. He is a beverage alcohol industry professional for over 20 years and has held leadership positions at Diageo, Bacardi, and Constellation brands. So welcome, Dan. Next up is Keith Toney. Keith is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer and EVP at Discover. Keith joined Discover in December 2019 and has more than 20 years of information technology experience in financial services and analytics at organizations such as LexisNexis, Ernst & Young, Connection Point, and Hartford Financial Services. So welcome, Keith. Next up is Julie Winkler. Julie has served as the Chief Commercial Officer of CME Group since 2016. She leads the company's sales, product marketing, research and product development, data analytics and digitization functions, as well as its innovation lab. Julie currently serves on the board of directors for S&P Dow Jones Indices and Valparaiso University, and is a Revenue 50 member within the World 50 network. So welcome, Julie. Finally, Hiral Chandra is today's moderator. Hiral is an active member of the Executives Club and the Business Technology Forum. As president and board advisor at Sunera Technologies, Hiral is a global digital and IT services executive with over 25 years of experience across a diverse set of industries. He's also an advisor for the Innovation Ecosystem Hub 88 and a member of the West Suburban Angels and actively engaged with venture capital investing. So welcome and thank you, Hiral, for moderating our panel discussion today. Welcome to all of our panelists. I think we're in for a very interesting discussion this morning. Data and analytics has a number of dimensions which are in the news every day. And so companies are always questioning, what should we be doing with data? How do we monetize the value of data? And that's core to our discussion this morning. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Hiral. Errol, over to you.
Thank you, Bob. And as the introduction said, we have an excellent panel and a very diverse set of perspectives coming up. My name is Hiral Chandrana. I'm really excited to moderate this session for today. We have an action-packed agenda, as Mark said, everything from best practices to monetization of data to security concerns, as well as looking into the future. So we'll maybe start with a slight data-centric view and infographic, and Megan, if you can help bring up that view. But there's a lot of data that is getting created in the current environment, and this should kind of not surprise anyone, but Domo releases this every year, I believe. I really like this sort of view and capture 2020 historic in many ways through the challenging pandemic times. And this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but every ad click or every social share, generating significant amount of data, as you all know. But even when it comes to business transactions and commerce that is happening, just for context, Amazon, which I'm sure all of us are leveraging, 2 years back, the same kind of statistic was about 1,000 packages were being shipped every day. Sorry, every minute, actually. And today it's almost close to 7,000. So things have kind of exploded. But having said all this, McKinsey released a study recently that, in spite of so much data, the actual value that is being created from the data is significantly untapped. And they in fact give some statistics across various industries. Healthcare, for example, is about 15%, manufacturing about 25%, retail at best about 35%. So net kind of averages out to about 25% of value being created. So that's a great segue to our panelists and get some unique perspectives from both our financial services experts as well as our consumer experts. I'm going to start actually with Julie. Julie at CME Group, you're heading the commercial side, and if you could share how data is being leveraged at CME Group to create commercial success, and also highlight some of the lessons learned along the way as you're working through the various industries at CME Group.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me today. Looking forward to the panel. CME Group has been around for almost 2 centuries, and as the world's leading derivatives marketplace, we've got futures and options on about 58 different global benchmarks. So for us, we're clearly in the data business, but we also are now using that data internally, really to enable the customer experience and grow CME's revenues. So one particular effort that I kicked off when I took over as Chief Commercial Officer was a project called Growth Hunters, where we ran a global innovation contest to identify ideas that we hoped would help fund new revenue growth as well as diversify our customer base. And one common theme across all these ideas generated from my team was that it really had data at the heart of many of them. So one of the fun ideas from that was we applied the concept of Michael Lewis's book, Moneyball, because if you can think about the exchange environment, right, we have just so much historical price data. And so what we did was said, what's happening when there are, atypical price movements, and what can we do to trigger a price alert for our customers and let them know when this event has happened before, what might it signal as a way for them to kind of think about their own trading strategies. Another thing we've been doing is just spending a lot of time to inventory all of the different ways that data is coming into our organization from our customers as really a way to track how we are digitally engaging with them. I'm sure, like many of my colleagues in 2020 with the pandemic, the amount of digital interactions we're having with our customers is simply skyrocketing. And so particularly just as we think about our web properties, our digital registrations there were up over 159% year on year. And so when we can, link that to a specific, unique person and actually take them through that whole customer journey, even in the B2B space, this really has given our team a tremendous amount of intelligence to really optimize what it is that we are dishing up for them in terms of personalized content. And more importantly, has really allowed us to stand up a new client acquisition function so that as we generate these leads, as we qualify these leads, our model is getting better and better so that our sales team is really spending their time on those NCA leads that are most qualified. And we also are using a lot with third-party data sets, which I'm sure many of my peers are as well. And that's really about also identifying new customers. So I think the best example there was when CME entered into the cryptocurrency space and we launched Bitcoin futures back in 2017. And for that, this was a new space for us. And so we used a number of third-party data sets to identify, what other users, were there Bitcoin miners out there that wanted to hedge their inventory with our futures contract. And so pulling that into our sales process gave us a lot more people that we could outreach to. And so over time, this Growth Hunters initiative and our NCA efforts have generated about $750 million in net new revenues for our business. So I'm proud to say that I think it's working. But I think, just to wrap up, I think there's a number of important lessons we've learned. A lot of it is that there's a tremendous amount of infrastructure that has to go behind all of this. I think it's a little bit, easier maybe for startups than companies like CME that have been around for 2 centuries. We have a lot of really old systems. And so to get those systems to talk to each other, to get that client information in a central place that it really could be used was a big investment that we're making and continue to make. And also, I think we've learned a lot about just the power of piloting and testing these processes, these sales enablement tools. You don't get it right the first time, and you understand and feed in more information and more data, and the output improves every single time. And I know we'll talk about it in a bit, but certainly just the compliance aspects of using this customer information. You got to make sure the compliance people are not the last people that you call, but the first people that you call, and really partner with them throughout the way so that as you refine these models, they really know what you're doing with the data and all of it meets all the regulatory requirements.
No, excellent. I mean, those are some really great insights, and particularly with some of the connections between all the data sets you mentioned. Dan, I'm going to turn to you. Bev Analytics is a young firm, I guess, relatively speaking. You have obviously tons of experience from this industry through your various other roles, but maybe you can introduce the firm a little bit, talk about your value proposition, also highlight some of the best practices that you've adopted along the way when it comes to leveraging and monetizing data.
Sure. Well, thank you. First and foremost, really, grateful to be here, with Bev Analytics, representing Bev Analytics. Certainly feel honored to be included in this Rockstar panel. And just to, share a little bit more about Bev Analytics, we're a digital survey platform for the beverage alcohol industry. We provide data about how brands are positioned in the bar channel, so how they're placed and positioned. Consumer brand companies spend a lot of money on promoting those brands in those channels. And a lot of times they have no idea how those brands are positioned in place and how their promotions are doing. Our unique value prop is that those very same brands go out and gather that data using their sales reps. And, it can be a cumbersome process, especially having been on the other side. It might take 20, 30 minutes per account. If you're seeing 8 accounts a day, that almost eats up all your time. So, we kind of came up with this novel idea. Why not use images, convert that to data on the back end, and to take a 20, 30 minute task, turn it into 5 minutes, and maybe be able to give better data and analytics in the process. So that was really kind of, the big idea around what Bev Analytics is and what it does. This channel in particular, because we focus solely on one channel, is really, really valuable to the industry as far as brand building. So, there's just this common belief that in the bar channel, this is where you build brands and engage with consumers. And so it's a very high investment channel, despite it not being necessarily, the highest volume channel. So, we thought there was no data coming from that channel, just because it's very large and cumbersome, fragmented, nuanced. And so, we kind of built a data dictionary for that channel, taxonomy to kind of capture everything in a comprehensive manner. And, that's kind of how we went against it. So, sharing some of our best practice. I think really, I always say still maybe in our industry, we're still pretty behind others, but, it's all about low hanging fruit for us. So, we can do, true ROI analysis. I remember doing ROI, analysis and not truly knowing whether the execution happened or not. So you'd look at results and you weren't necessarily sure if that was, a true view of what your true ROI was. But when we can kind of marry up exactly what, how well a program was executed in say a sub channel, or channel type, if you will, then we can do a true ROI analysis and help manufacturers determine where they should spend their money, what their route to market plan should be. So I would say that's probably, it's very low hanging fruit. It's probably one of our best practices. The other one is, large manufacturers are very well known for setting standards against different account types. And because we capture this comprehensive view of the entire channel, which no one else does, we're really able to take any any set of standards and measure exactly where they are in compliance and where they're not, and almost by default give every sales rep a very specific action plan. And so those are, I would say, our two best practices that we can that we provide for our clients. And yeah, that's a little bit more about Bev Analytics. Thanks again for having me. It's an honor to be here.
That's great. So maybe just building on ROI, that's clearly in everyone's mind. And Keith, you've been a veteran here in the whole data science, data analytics space. I believe Discover Financial Services combined multiple functions recently to create this integrated data analytics unit that you're leading at the CEO level. So it'd be great to hear from you on not just how value is being created leveraging data, but how you're leveraging it to even serve customers better.
Yeah, Earl, thank you, and echo the comments of my fellow panelists. Certainly a privilege to be here to speak to the group. And to your point, right, creating value, and the session title, right, data to dollars, right? We think of it as how we use data to ultimately serve customers. And most of the value creation in the usage of data comes from continuing to refine how we understand the customers themselves, customer behavior. Obviously, we're in the credit card and bank and payments businesses, and so we want a deeper understanding of risk. And so largely it's micro segmentation, right? The days of kind of thinking about like the market for 18 to 34-year-olds in big blocks and big averages, right? Those days are kind of long gone. So having additional data that you can kind of micro segment to apply different treatments, different strategies, different marketing campaigns has been a big push, and that's even getting further and further towards from batch kind of interactions as you send out different campaigns to real time, right? The real time kind of personalization of how you interact with the consumer while they're on your mobile device, while they're on the website, and so much of that is now event driven. And as you think about when the customer takes a certain action, you can now message to them and suggest the next best action. So those are the speed, kind of the velocity of those interactions, obviously with an incredible amount of underlying data, how we personalize and treat each customer in a special way that attaches them to the brand and to the value proposition, right? Those are all the drivers of value that we think about every day.
No, that's great. I guess, Dan, maybe going back to you for a second. Keith, obviously talked about serving customers better, but you in Bev Analytics, you're also looking at market intelligence and customer segmentation. Do you want to add to that in terms of how additional value or ROI is created? I know you touched on that a little bit, but anything to add there, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So, I mean, a lot of times people will say, well, you're gathering data, just for the benefit of the manufacturer, or the business. But at the end of the day, by, utilizing that data and optimizing the consumer offerings per se, we're actually offering a better, product for the consumer, because we're helping them find the brands and offerings that they're, actually, truly looking for. But, I'll just kind of give you an example. We gather, we do a lot of segmentation. We have, channel types, if you will. So, we'll have different types of bar types, like an Irish bar, casual dining bar. And then within that, we capture data like drink types, brands, how they're served, how they're garnished, mixers, flavors. We start seeing, we start seeing trends like low alcohol offerings on menus, things along those lines, that now we can take that data back to a manufacturer and say, hey, this is, if we think a subset of accounts is, the influential accounts, this is what you're seeing in your influential accounts. This might be some of the offerings that you want to take to market. And so now we can help manufacturers become better partners with their operators, so that they can bring them turnkey solutions that their operators can also now deploy for their consumers. And, net in the end, the consumers come back to, offerings that they're looking for, just based on the fact that, we kind of have an idea what that is. And then maybe even we kind of help with that discovery, what types of new cocktails or offerings or, things along those lines that those consumers might be looking for. And I think a great example, probably the most recent one, is that no to low alcohol. Folks still want that social engagement, once we kind of come out of this pandemic. But, they're just not drinking, as much, right? And so they're looking for low to no alcohol offerings on those menus. And we're able to kind of show, what some of those are that are resonating, as well as, how to, best execute against them.
Awesome. Julie, you did mention how data was getting leveraged internally, and great examples of the growth center and some of the impact that's already been created. But CME Group is, it's really providing data as a service as well, right? In terms of externally and to your customers. So do you want to add to this whole kind of value creation point of how you're helping create bottom line or top line impact that matter?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, switching gears off the cocktails for a minute. So our global and our electronic markets, they obviously generate a lot of data, and that data is really what is helping, to power the trading and the hedging strategies that our customers deploy. So the market data we're distributing, it's going to about 170 different countries right now, through 400 intermediaries. So CME has one of the largest market data distribution networks, besides Bloomberg and Refinitiv, which many folks know. So right now, our market data business is generating about 12% of our overall revenues at CME Group. It's a critical part of our offering. I'd say one of the key use cases, and this has really been a trend underway for a while, is customers really wanting to use that real-time market data offering within their own trading technology as the industry has grown and evolved. And so electronic markets, are not waiting for anyone these days, and it's down to fractions of a millisecond. And so the quicker that data can get into their hands and into their systems, it just becomes critically important to their trading strategies. So we've had to make a lot of investments in that infrastructure. We've made it possible for those clients to receive the data faster. That includes, offering low latency access in our data centers, more granular data, new data products, more flexible ways to obtain that. We were the first to introduce a new Google Cloud platform offering that, didn't require people to come through our existing infrastructure, but really was trying to attract those new customers that I talked about earlier. So the past, 4 years, as we've looked about it, we've tripled the amount of volume of market data that we're providing to our clients. And so those upgrades seem to be paying off. And then I'd say, kind of one of the other things we've done is using that same data that we're generating to offer our clients a number of, free tools. So people can come to our website. Capital efficiencies, the total cost of trade is super important to our clients. And so being able to kind of do some of that data analytics ourselves and offer that up to clients to say kind of what would be the best time to trade these instruments is kind of how we, both provide that data through our channels, as well as, some slick tools for people to actually ingest that into their own systems.
That's great. And Julie, you covered quite a few points there, and I'm sure separately the audience is going to reach out to you regarding Bitcoin and hedging and strategy for that. But just as a reminder, feel free to enter your questions. We have at least about 10-15 minutes we're planning for Q&A, and you've heard some great perspectives already. We're going to build on that, but please do enter your questions as we go along. Julie, you also talked about infrastructure and some of the foundational elements, and I know that I come from a IT and services background, so you mentioned Google Cloud Platform as well. Another company that's been in the news recently is Snowflake for their kind of data and cloud platform. In fact, I think their CEO is in the Forbes cover page, rightly so, with the success. But organizations are leveraging, right from data foundation to your earlier point to microsegmentation. I think Keith and Dan talked about that as well as visualizing data in different kind of ways. So I know we could go on and on for hours on this topic, but I want to pivot towards slightly sensitive, but also a hot topic of security and privacy. And with so much regulatory kind of environment around us, and I think just this morning I was reading a piece on Apple and Facebook again, with their back and forth in terms of consumer data. So there's a lot going on there in terms of data breach. And Keith, I know you talked about serving customers better, and clearly that's kind of the focus when it comes to customer value. But would you be able to share some light on, as Discover, your organization, how do you look at making sure that the customer data is protected from some of the privacy and security concerns that everyone has?
So let me come at it maybe kind of from two directions. In terms of customer kind of sensitivity and security around data, we certainly engage with them in the market, even with some products around identity theft protection, because that's a concern. And so Discover is one of the leading digital only banks, and so we don't have a branch that a customer can walk into, and that's been kind of the traditional notion of feeling safe, right? There's a big vault, you had that kind of experience, that's how your grandmother kind of thought about banking and so forth, and so those days are changed a little bit, right? So we actually try to engage the customer in a conversation that weaves security into, so that they feel like they're cared about, their data is secure. We ask them to kind of make sure they confirm their personal information. We encourage them to use two-factor authentication, those kinds of things, and then we're active in the marketplace with different products that we think speak to some of their concerns around security. So I think there's an external stance that should become part of your customer experience and even part of your brand as you are in the marketplace. And then of course internally, right? I mean, we invest every day in the notions of data governance and data management and data security, with different layers of encryption and tokenization and so forth. And that's been a continued investment, because compliance with CCPA and the other regs are moving fast, and those are creating things that you need to extend to the customers if they want to quote unquote be forgotten, and those kinds of things. So you have to be very attentive to those. So we monitor all that in conjunction with our friends in the the regulatory environment, given financial services being so regulated. So it's something you have to stay incredibly vigilant to. And while some of that stuff in our notion of here kind of data to dollars, right? Some of that stuff doesn't feel like you're monetizing, right? It's like hygiene, it's like flossing every day, right? It's just really important, because if you get those things wrong, you lose the opportunity to serve the customer and ultimately kind of create the value that we talked about maybe in the first part of this. So we're trying to keep a really thoughtful balance of doing all that work.
No, that rightly said. I mean, I think there's so much to the whole. I think it was shocking even last year when SolarWinds got impacted, and at a level where even the U.S. Justice Department got, was a victim. I think the challenge is so many, but I think you've kind of outlined really well how to take kind of a structured and methodical approach, and it's really hygiene to your point, and building from there. So I'm going to shift again to looking ahead a little bit towards the future. Before I do that, Megan, if you can maybe bring up one of the data points. I know we've heard from the financial services industry and of course from Dan on the beverage industry, but there's so much happening in the healthcare sector, which I'm sure, given again what we've been through the last 9-10 months, there's various dimensions to this. There's actually a very prominent author, which I like, Amy Webb, who also runs this Future Institute, where she uses kind of facts and data, puts that across to make future predictions. And as you can see here, I mean, there's numerous examples, whether it's the Health Data Lake platform from AWS, looking at providing that structured view towards data for payers and providers, but also some very cutting edge technology on the genomic side and kind of the AI leveraging to solve some very tough challenges and problems, right? Whether it's in this particular example, the protein folding problem, or our kind of very own Chicago headquartered Tempus. Some of you might have heard Eric last week talk about it, but how they're leveraging data-driven kind of approach towards precision medicine and helping the physicians really kind of deliver those personalized experiences that some of our panelists also talked about in their industry. So I just wanted to provide you this context as we look into the future. And so, really kind of maybe a rapid fire round to close out with each of the panelists, maybe starting with Dan, for all the kind of founders out there, leaders out there running their companies, any advice that you have as they look ahead in the future and planning their kind of data initiatives?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think at least in this industry, in the beverage alcohol industry, our landscape's changing, rapidly as well, especially with the onset of e-commerce. And we were probably even further behind because of all the regulation. So now as that has kind of come, completely forward, you have less places to engage with consumers. And, the bar channel is going to be one of the last standing channels where you can actually have some sort of meaningful engagement with consumers. So, I guess focusing on, the data that, in our industry that, actually is going to help you, better engage with the consumer to provide better offerings at better price and the right locations, those sorts of things. That's kind of what I see, more for the future. And, I think this channel in particular is just going to, really be that mechanism or that vehicle for this specific industry, at least.
Got it. Julie, you want to maybe share your thoughts, again, looking ahead 2021 and beyond, any initiatives planned from your organization, CME Group, as you look at this whole space of data to dollars?
Yeah, I think there's probably three key things that we're focused on. The first of them is that, just providing customers with raw data isn't enough anymore. And so there is this demand that people really have near real-time insights that they're looking for. And so whether, when you look across financial services in a number of industries, right, the more that you can provide that enriched insights, the analytical data, the more people are willing to pay for it. So there brings in the dollars. But I think that's where we're really seeing a lot of emphasis across our industry, and one that we're looking on as well is that as we bring financial markets together, we can offer more products, more asset classes. People are trying to optimize how they trade across these platforms, and FX CME is one example of that. I'd say another trend is just having this shift of more on-demand use of data. In some recent client validation outreach that we did, clients aren't interested in buying historical data and using it for their models and their systems anymore. They just want to rent it. Obviously, we see that in a lot of other aspects of industries and our own personal consumption, but we're seeing that in the data world as well. So a much more kind of pay-as-you-go model is going to become more relevant. And then the third, I think you've heard it from a number of my fellow panelists as well. I mean, the pandemic has, I believe, really sped up the digitization of the sales process, even in the B2B space. And so across industries, right, we're seeing that there was a lot of late demand from customers to engage more digitally throughout the sales process. One of the major consulting firms found that like up to 80% of consumers in the B2B space wanted to be sold to digitally. And so that's going to require a lot of change on our part. I think data is a huge aspect of that. So you can make sure that you are fine-tuning your sales enablement process, that, you know, to Dan's point from earlier, you're putting all the data in the hands of your salespeople to use their time as efficiently as possible. And that data enrichment, I think, is really going to help kind of critically transform the sales process across industries and really kind of get that level of personalization that we all experience as our individual consumers, and what Keith is delivering at Discover to really how we do our corporate purchasing as well. So we're pretty excited about that.
That's amazing. I think you hit on so many points out there, Julie, particularly with the real-time kind of insights. Completely agree. And also we've seen from my own experiences in terms of business models, which are more outcome based and kind of really based on pay as you go, as you referred to. Keith, I guess final thought from your side before we jump into Q&A. I think there's already quite a few questions that are lined up here, but your thoughts looking ahead in terms of how you see Discover investing or continuing to invest in the space.
So, I mean, maybe playing off of Julie a little bit. I mean, I think the digital transformation is just being accelerated. I mean, even your graphic had kind of the teledoc or the telemedicine experience, right? I mean, you might have randomly thought about that, 2 years ago, but you're pretty sure thinking about it now if you're needing to kind of engage with a physician, and that's a very different experience, right? And so how do you make that how do you make that effective, right? I mean, obviously a healthcare conversation is a complex conversation to do as we continue to learn how to engage over Zoom and these kinds of media. But they do also add the ability to have them recorded. We can look at the video. We can transcribe the audio and do text mining for patterns in these things. And it's similar in our financial services space, right? Discover prides itself on 100% US based customer service, and those conversations in the context of a financial product are complex. A lot of our customers are wanting to do more digitally. So how do we enable that? How do we keep thinking about how to really give the customer the best experience, but also help them deal with something that is complex? And the healthcare example, how we're going to kind of play forward in that, and then I think the opportunity to kind of capture data and improve that process for the consumer, I think, is super fascinating and becomes very event driven and all those kind of things we were talking about previously. But I just think the pandemic is accelerating so many pieces of the digital transformation that would have been on a pace to happen in years is now happening in months, and we feel it, and our customers feel it, right? And I mean, on the financial services side, right, there's a pretty big portion of the population that's feeling a bit of distress, right? Joblessness and so forth, and from a Discover perspective, we're very focused on how to kind of work with those customers to make them feel like there's hope for a brighter financial future, and trying to leverage and give kind of time where we can, and those kind of things. There's so much interesting customer behavior work to be done that's data driven as we think forward kind of post pandemic. So some thoughts there.
Oh, true, very true. And I know we've kind of touched only on a few of the industries with financial services and so the consumer. We talked about healthcare. Obviously, I think one of the audience members posted something on smart city innovation. of how data is being leveraged. Same things happening on the energy side, manufacturing, on the shop floor. So I think the kind of the explosion is not just at the consumer customer level, but across the value chain with various industries. So it's fascinating. And as all of you kind of rightly said, it's just going to accelerate even further. So with that, I think that kind of concludes our the core sort of session. We have quite a few questions. We're going to want to spend enough time on that interaction on the Q&A. And Keith, there are a few questions actually for you. So I'm going to start out there, and there's a couple of questions here which are for the broader panelists, including Julie and Dan as well. So I guess one of the questions is, and this is addressed to you, Keith. So I'm curious to know what technology challenges you encounter with respect to realizing the full potential of analytics at Discover.
Technology challenges and realizing
technology challenges that you encounter.
Yeah.
Realizing the full potential.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I would say all of us, and Julie made reference to being a 200-year-old company. So Discover's 35 years old. They're celebrating actually 35th anniversary kind of here this month. And I think we all face the technology challenges of having legacy systems that are in kind of various states of maturity and various states of kind of end of life and kind of all of that. And we've been migrating, of course, to more of a cloud-centric footprint for some time, but still have systems that are mainframe based and others that evolved over a period of time where maybe there wasn't quite as much attention around data governance and some of the attention to detail. So the challenge is, I think, not only at Discover, but in my career, I've been in numerous kind of corporations where they're all facing this, that you have data that's not as well documented, that's not as well understood, and and processes that need that same kind of hygiene. So we face that, of course. I do think that there's the other piece is, I think, starting to handle the scale of some of the unstructured data. We talked a little bit about voice to text transcription and some of these other things. And there's, of course, so much kind of streaming and clickstream and other data that's becoming available. And I can't even imagine some of the scale maybe in Julie or Dan's worlds, because they're dealing with such active industries. But from our perspective, it's those kinds of challenges, wanting to move fast, but also wanting to make sure you have to satisfy the regulatory requirements and your promises to your customers and those kinds of things. So those challenges are not necessarily unique, but I think we all face those, and we're all kind of on this kind of ongoing improvement and transformation cycle.
I think that makes sense. Julie, you want to add to that? I know you already hit on kind of the infrastructure element and some of the technology, but and there's kind of a related question in terms of how are the panelists leveraging AI? So I don't, if you want to use that as an example in CME, but just more broadly also, anything on the technology challenges?
Yeah, I think it sounds, we have a lot of the same issues that Keith is facing at Discover, right? Of a lot of legacy systems, built over many decades. Transitioning off those is obviously a challenge. And those are the things, right, that, let's be honest, right, are hard to get investment dollars internally when everyone wants to say, oh, let's go spend investment money on the fun stuff. Let's go build some chat bots and do the CX work and everything else. But to say, oh, we need to go, get this data off these old servers, that is an uphill mountain I've had to climb a few times. That's not real fun. But I will say, I think when we think about machine learning and AI, one of the great applications for us has been from a market surveillance standpoint. And so just the huge amounts of data that obviously our, trading engines are creating as our customers engage on our trading platforms, to be able to apply, AI and machine learning to those, to that body of data, and to do it with all of pattern recognition and all the advancements. I started my career back in the regulatory area 20 plus years ago. I would have died for some of that, type of technology at that point in time. And so that has been a really, I think, great aspect. I mean, we are in the business of providing risk management. We want people to know that our markets are safe and secure, and we are going to, deter, the bad actors in our space. And so being able to apply that technology is an important thing, and one that, I think has been a good application for us.
Great. There is a question which I think is very relevant, and maybe I'll throw it out. I don't know who wants to take a shot at it, but some organizations emphasize data governance and data integrity, and maybe some other organizations emphasize process governance and process integrity. So the question is, how do you see the relationship between these two priorities? And frankly, I don't know if they're truly that different, but I guess the question is, process is, or the comment along with the question seems to be, the process is definitely fading in profile in 2021. So how do you see the relationship between these priorities? Any thoughts?
So I'll take a shot, Raul, and then Julie, Dan, you're welcome to join. So it's an interesting nuance in the way the question is posed on data governance, maybe versus process governance or diligence, and that maybe process is fading. I would probably suggest I don't feel like process is exactly fading, but I would say, like, as we talked a little bit about kind of event-based triggers for customers, one of the things we're thinking hard about is kind of event enabling our processes. And so as a process executes, let's just say kind of left to right, it's publishing different events that allow us to measure kind of the health and the compliance and the efficiency of that process. So in my mind, there's a lot of, of course, detail and governance around the data that's being generated there that allows us to kind of measure and improve our processes. So I might actually contend that those two ideas are becoming a little bit closer, and it's actually an area there. I think there was a question around some AI, right? We're, as we process data through different systems, monitoring for certain trends and kind of consistency in the data, you can create kind of learning loops using some machine learning AI-like ideas, so that you have a better picture of what data kind of is in and out of tolerance and those kinds of things that help you to gauge the kind of the health of the ecosystem. So so I think I see data governance and process maybe just a little bit more integrated and related than the person might have in the framing.
No, I would agree. I think Dan, you want to add anything from your kind of lens or vantage point? I know you're slightly kind of different industry, but any perspectives on sort of the data governance, process governance elements?
That's a good question. I don't know how much it applies to our industry at this point, just because it's so new. But I mean, I do want to kind of touch on some of the AI machine learning stuff that it's kind of happening in this industry specifically.
Sure.
So maybe taking that slightly in a different direction, but just kind of touching on, we're digitizing the bar space, and while we currently are using human codification to translate our data, we're also simultaneously building the AI to use image recognition, with human in the loop to basically automate that. And so I see a lot more of that happening, in the beverage industry. It's already happening in, most CPG industries in the off channels, but this channel in particular, because it's such a specialized channel, not that many categories play in it. It hasn't really been developed yet, and we're one of the folks that are doing it. And I know that's not really the question you asked, but I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the AI and machine learning stuff that's happening in our industry and specifically in this channel.
No, that's and the use cases of how AI is being leveraged is just kind of growing to some of the earlier comments that you and kind of Keith as well as Julie made. And I've seen CPG industry from a very long time, so it's sort of great to see the evolution of where we are. I guess we have maybe time for one more question. There is Let me try to synthesize this question a little bit. It actually reads, from a monetization of data perspective, how do you see the marketplace and pricing happening along with privacy questions? For example, lately there's been a question on programs like 23andMe, Ancestry.com, along with China trying to get genetic data on individuals. I think it's a very complex topic and kind of there's a lot to it there, but just I guess the net of it seems to be the monetization. I think we hit on it a little bit, but monetization and kind of balancing that. And Julie, you gave some examples on pricing and some of the use cases. I don't know if you want to take a shot on this in just terms of balancing privacy with the monetization in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, right, in the B2B space, we have, institutional customers, it's critically important that they know, and for regulatory purposes, that we really protect their data. And so that data is not being used to, directly sell their information in any such way. And so we spend a tremendous amount of time, with our compliance folks to really earmark the access to that data, where that data resides, who has access to it, because our customers place that trust in us. And so the monetization of selling the data, that is all anonymized data, trading data from our platform. So for us, it's a little less of a channel conflict than maybe the question here. But I've been a Discover Card user for 25 years now, so maybe Keith has some highlights there. He's been protecting my data for a long time.
We keep your data very secure, Julie. So thank you for being a Discover Card customer. It's a tricky question, and I think there's a lot of, certainly a lot of activity, in the media, politically, around. I mean, the monetization question. Of course, it should be tied to some kind of exchange of value, right? I mean, if you're a customer and you're receiving services, you need to be transparent about that customer kind of opting in to contribute their data in a way that's understood. And I think largely some of the challenge right now is there's data that's coming off of social media that it wasn't as intuitive, the value that it would create, and did the customer really kind of opt in to have their data maybe used in some of those capacities, right? And so we're all wrestling. We all watch The Social Dilemma, right? We see kind of how it's playing itself out, and so I think ultimately it's going to push for more transparency with the customer or the consumer, having to be more explicit in opting in that their data is used, and if not, have the right to have it forgotten, right? So the some of the premise underneath the CCPA and some of those things, I think there's, those things are going to get, continue to probably get strengthened. And I think that's ultimately healthy for the, for the consumer protection.
Got it. No, that's great. And that's all the time we have for Q&A. I've truly enjoyed it. I wish we could kind of go on. It's obviously a fascinating topic. We covered a lot of ground, and really want to thank all of you, the panelists in particular, Julie, Keith, Dan. I also want to thank the Executive Club and the sponsors and the audience for some of the questions and the interaction digitally as well. There's a lot of money going into the whole security aspects. I'm sure there's solutions here in terms of privacy and protection while we monetize and leverage the data to create value. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew for closing kind of comments and wrap up. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Bouzier. I'm a partner at Sidley Austin and a co-chair of the Executives Club Financial Services Forum, along with Chris Porter of NTT. What a fantastic discussion. So first, let me say thank you to Haral and to all of our panelists today. A virtual round of applause for everybody. As we can all tell from this discussion, these days we're all looking for new ways to shape and utilize our existing data infrastructure. And learning about this today and how to make the most of our customer insights, I thought was really interesting. Keith raised a great point when identifying the challenge that our largest, most history-filled companies face as they look to update their data infrastructures to meet the demands of the new market dynamic. I also enjoyed Julie's comments on not only what kind of data is being produced and consumed, but how the consumption of data is changing from purchases to rental, and how that convergence of the personal style of consumption can affect commercial data management. And Dan, it's interesting to me, you know, beverage and consumption is got to be one of the oldest businesses in the history of the world. And it's really fascinating to see how data and AI are starting to even get into that, where things can still be reinvented. Not surprised, right, in today's day and age. But with that, we hope you found this information very helpful to carry you on through the rest of your day. Please keep an eye on the Executive Club website for more upcoming virtual programs. In particular, we hope you can join us on Thursday for a conversation with Landmark Development's Bob Dunn, where he will be discussing One Central, the future mobility hub of Chicago. I've actually got that one written down. You can sign up online at www.executivesclub.org. With that, we hope you had a wonderful day, and thank you again for joining us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.